Hi there, it's Mr. Rosen here again. This video here, I'm going to be basically solving three triangles, and I'm going to show you which formula to use to solve these triangles and how do you know which formula you're working with. So we're going to be solving triangles today. Okay, so let's start with the first triangle. I'm going to draw it out here. So my first triangle, I'm going to draw it as best I can. Let's call this thing X, Y, Z. And we're going to have some lengths or some values here. We're going to have a 65-degree angle for X, 52 for Y, and 10 down here for side Y. And we got to solve this. So if we solve it, it means we need to find side X, we need to find side Z, and angle Y. Sorry, not angle Y, angle Z, because that's the missing one. Okay. So the very first thing we're going to do is we can solve and find side Z. So angle Z, I keep saying side Z, angle Z is what I want. Angle Z is going to equal to 180 minus 65 degrees minus 52. And that is going to equal to 63 degrees. Okay, so 63, I'm going to label that in there. Okay, so that was one of the missing pieces of the triangle. Now, the next part, what I have to do is I have to actually decide what type of triangle is this and what formulas can I use. So there's a couple things I can do with triangles. I can do what's called SOH CAH TOA, which is my primary trig ratios. That's sine, cosine, and tan. I can only use that in a right angle triangle, a triangle that has a 90 degrees. So this triangle does not have a 90, so I cannot use SOH CAH TOA. So now the question is, can I use sine law or cosine law? And the way that I always determine whether I can use sine law is I look and see if there is a pair of an angle with its opposite side anywhere. And there actually is. So if you look at this triangle, I've got angle Y right here, it's 52, and side Y is 10. So that's like a matching pair of an angle with its opposite side. So because I've got that, what that means is I can use the sine law. Okay? So that's the big clue. If you have an angle with its opposite side, you're allowed to use sine law. So let's figure out X first. So the way that the formula is going to look is I'm going to write X over sine X equals, and now I'm going to match it up with a known pair, which is the Y's. So I'm going to write Y over sine Y. Okay, I'm going to use the Y's because I know everything about the Y's. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is plug in everything I know. So I don't know side X, but I do know angle X is going to be, so I'm going to write sine 65, that's X, equals Y, which is 10, and then sine Y is going to be sine 52. Okay. The next step, my goal is I want to get X completely by itself. So I am going to cross multiply this sine 65 to the upper right corner. I'm going to cross multiply it with the 10. So my next line is going to be X equals 10 sine 65 over sine 52. And at this stage, we can just use your calculator. So you can punch in 10 times sine 65, hit equals, divide by sine 52, and hit equals again. You'll get X equals 11.5. X equals 11.5. And that is one of our missing lengths. So we got that one now. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out side Z. And side Z, I'm going to use the same exact strategy. I'm going to use sine law because I have a pair of an angle with its opposite side. So for Z, I'm going to write Z over sine Z equals, and I'm going to use the Y's again because I know both of them, Y over sine Y. Now side Z I don't know, so leave that as a Z. Angle Z I know is now sine 63. That's angle Z. And we solved that one earlier. And that's equal to the Y's, so 10 over sine 52. So angle y is 52 and side y is 10. Okay? Exact same process. I'm going to cross multiply this to get the z by itself. So z is going to equal to 10 sine 63 over sine 52. And you can use your calculator to punch this in. So 10 times sine 63, it equals, divide by sine 52. You're going to get z equals 11.3. And that's the last piece. So we figured out the angle up here, angle z, and we figured out the two sides. So again, for sine law, look for an angle with its opposite side. Look for an angle with its opposite side. If you've got that, it's pretty much guaranteed a sine law question. And in this case, it was the y's, right? I know, oops, I drew a dot by accident here. The 10 with the 52 across from it, that is how I knew it was a sine law question. Okay, let's try another triangle here. Okay, so I'm going to draw it out again. Oops, I'm on the highlighter still. Let's try the pen. Okay, so this is going to be M, N, P. Angle N is going to be 49. Side P is going to be 50. And side M is going to be 72. So the first thing I'm asking myself, I'm looking at this triangle, is this a SOH CAH TOA type question? And no, there is no 90 that I can tell right now, so it's definitely not SOH CAH TOA. The next thing I ask myself is it a sine law question? And for a sine law question, I have to have a known angle with a side across from it that I know. And I don't have that anywhere. So if I'm looking for at the N, I don't know side N over here. So I don't know that. That's a mystery to me. Angle P I don't know, so I don't have P with little p. And angle M I don't know either, so I don't have a pair of an angle with its opposite side anywhere. So that's your first clue that it's going to be cosine law. And specifically, cosine law can be used in two scenarios. This scenario is known as side angle side. Okay? And side angle side means I know two sides and the angle in the middle. Okay, the angle in the middle. So that is cosine law. You could have another scenario where you know all three sides. So side, side, side. So if you have all three sides and no angles, you can also use the cosine law as well. So we're going to use the cosine law to solve this question. And the first thing I'm going to figure out is side n. Okay, side n, if I write out the equation for that, is going to be n squared equals the square of the other two sides. So it'll be m squared plus p squared. Then it's minus 2 times m times p cosine angle n. Okay, that's going to be the formula to solve for n squared. Okay, now once I've got my formula, I'm going to start plugging in everything that I can. So the n I don't know, so leave that as n squared. The m is going to be 72, so that's 72 squared. The p is 50, so that's 50 squared. Then it's minus 2 times 72 times 50 times cosine of angle 49, because that's what n is. Okay, now we just start solving this thing, and you just take your time, do one piece at a time. So 72 squared, use your calculator, you're going to get 5,184. 50 squared is going to be 2,500. And this number on the end here, you're going to go negative 2 times 72 times 50 times cos 49. Punch all four of those in together. You should get negative 4,723.63. Okay. The next thing, we've got three numbers. We're going to add those together. So we're going to write n squared is going to equal to, and you punch those all in and add them up, you're going to get 2,960.37. And the last step is I need to make this n, not n squared. The way you remove an exponent 2 is you square root both sides. So n is going to equal to the square root of this big number here, which ends up being 54.4. That's my n. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to label that right over here. So 54.4. Okay? Now, if I'm solving this triangle, I got to figure out all of the missing angles and all of the missing sides. Okay? At this stage, I now have an angle with its opposite side. If I look at the ends, I know angle n and side n. Okay, so now that I've got a pair like that, I can actually switch and start using sine law. If you go back, sine law equations tend to be a lot more simple. Okay, usually it's just a cross multiplication. It's pretty easy to solve those. Whereas cosine law is pretty long, right? There's a lot of ways of making mistakes with this. So I tend to switch to the sine law once I'm done using the cosine law. So let's go ahead and we're going to solve for angle M next. That's going to be the next thing I'm going to look for. So for me to get angle M, I'm going to write sine M over little m equals, and we're going to have to match it up with the known pair, which is going to be the ends. So I'm going to write sine n over little n. Now we're going to punch everything in that we can. So we don't know side m, sine m. But I do know side m, that's going to be 72, equals sine n is going to be sine 49, and little n is going to be 54.4. That's the side length of n. Okay? Next thing we do, we cross multiply, just like we did in the previous question. The 72 is going to cross up here, and I'm going to write sine m equals 72 times the sine of 49 over 54.4. And you're going to get sine m equals, you're going to punch this in your calculator, 72 times sine 49, hit equals, divide by 54.4, hit equals again. You should get 0.9989, like that. Okay? Now the last thing we have to do is we need to turn that into an angle. So the way you turn this into an angle is you're going to say m equals sine inverse, or second sine, of 0.9989. And then I'm just going to have to go up here, running out of space. M is going to equal to, when you hit the second sine of 0.9989, you're going to get 87 degrees. Okay, so that's angle M. Angle M is 87 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and label that in my triangle now. 87. Okay. Now we've got the last thing we got to find is angle P, and angle P is pretty straightforward. We know 2 out of the 3 angles in a triangle, so we can just subtract from 180. So angle P is going to equal 180 minus 87 minus 49, and we're going to get angle P equals 44 degrees. And there's my last thing I needed, so 44 right here. Okay. So again, this triangle, it started off as a cosine law question because I had no angle with its opposite side. Once I found side n though, now I have angle n and side n. I've got a pair and I switched into the sine law, and that's how I ended up getting angle m instead. Okay? Let's do one more question. Okay, so this one here, let's draw another triangle. Okay, I'm going to call this ABC, and this is going to be 25. Oops, that doesn't look very nice. 25, and this is going to be 8. Okay, so I'm looking at this triangle. The first thing I notice is angle C is a 90 degree. Because it's a 90 degree, I can use SOH CAH TOA. That's pretty much immediate. Okay, and SOH CAH TOA, these are your 3 primary trig ratios. So let's label everything on here. So I'm going to label little b right here and little c. And let's go ahead and figure out what little b is first. So side b. So the way I'm going to do that, the very first thing I'm actually going to do is if I'm looking at angle 25, so I'm looking from the viewpoint of angle B, I like to label my opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. So across from the 25 is little b. That's my opposite. I'm going to label little OPP right there. If I'm looking at my hypotenuse, that's across from the 90, so that's C. I'm going to call that hypotenuse up there. Whatever's left, that's going to be my adjacent. I like to just label it like that. It makes it a little bit easier for me. So now I want to solve for little b. So little b, this is my opposite, and I know the adjacent. So I have to use the adjacent because that's a known value. So then I got to figure out what primary trig ratio has O and A in it. And it's actually 10. O and A. So that's the formula I'm going to use to solve this. So I'm going to write 10, oops, I should have done blue. That's okay though. 10 of 25 equals opposite over adjacent. So 10, 25 is going to equal my opposite is B, and my adjacent is 8. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cross multiply the 8 up with the 10, 25. I'm going to write 8, 10, 25 equals B. And this I'm going to punch in my calculator. So 8 times 10, 25, you're going to get 3.7 is equal to B. 3.7 is B. Okay. Now, let's look at side C. So side C, that is my hypotenuse, and I know my adjacent. I know the adjacent. So which formula uses A and H? That is going to be cosine this time. A and H is cosine. So let's use cosine to solve that one. Okay, so for cosine, we're going to write cos 25 is going to equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. So cos 25 equals, the adjacent is 8. The hypotenuse is labeled as the letter C. And now I've got to go ahead and solve this for C. So I'm going to bring the C to the upper left corner, and I'm going to write C bracket cos 25 equals 8. I put the cos 25 in brackets only because I had the letter C in front of it, and I don't want it to look like CC. So I just want to make sure that these are separated and multiplied. Okay. The next thing I got to do is I got to get the C by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by cos 25, and I'll get C equals 8 over cos 25. Okay. And then this I can punch in my calculator. So I go 8 divided by cos 25, and I will get C equal to 8.8. Okay. So I've got the two missing sides. The very last thing I need to get is actually angle A. I'm missing angle A. And angle A is going to be pretty straightforward. Angle A is going to be 180 minus 25 minus 90. So you just subtract away the two angles you know, 25 and 90. When you subtract those away, you're going to get angle A equal to 65. Okay? So there's the three missing pieces of this triangle. Okay? So these were three different triangles. I had to use three different formulas to solve them. And just as a quick summary, okay, for a cosine law question, for cosine law, you're going to have two types of triangles. You can have a triangle that looks like this. So maybe you've got, I don't know if this one actually works, but you can have something that looks like this. So 6, 5, and 30. You're going to have two sides with an angle in the middle. That's your first clue, it's cosine law, if it looks like that. It might also look like this. 4, 5, 7. Okay, so you can have side, angle, side, or all sides. So side, side, side. Those are going to be cosine law questions. For sine law, you're always going to have an angle with its opposite side. So let's say our triangle has an angle 65, 7, and maybe this is 9 right here. Okay, that's going to be a sine law question because I've got the angle 65 with the side across it, which is 70. that is your first clue right away. It's a sine law question. And finally, the last one is going to be your SOH type questions. And SOH is any triangle that has a 90 degree in it. Okay? If you've got a 90 degree, that's pretty much guaranteed going to be SOH. And you keep life simple. They're not too difficult usually when you're using your primary trig ratios. Okay? So I hope this video makes some sense, and I hope you learned a little bit about using these different formulas to solve various types of triangles.